Ilze Duarte, a translator from Brazilian Portuguese to English. It is my pleasure to be in conversation with Cristina Pinto-Bailey. She is a writer, scholar, and translator of Brazilian literature. She has translated writers such as Conceição Evaristo, Jamila Ribeiro, Maria Valéria Rezende, and her work has appeared in Review, Literature and Arts of the Americas, Latin American Literature Today, and other venues. She also translated and written the critical introduction to Maria Firmina do Reis's 1859 abolitionist novel Ursula, published by Tagas in 2021. She has been writing reviews of Brazilian and Spanish American fiction and poetry and translation, especially for World Literature Today and Action Books. It is a pleasure to be talking to you.
Same here, Ilze. Thanks for inviting me to be here with San Jordi Book Festival in New York City. It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
Likewise. So we will be talking about Cristiane Sobral, a Brazilian author. How did you first encounter her work?
I don't actually remember when I first read Cristiane Sobral's work. I believe I first came to know her poetry, and then later I started reading her fiction as well. But since early on in my career as a college professor, I included Black Brazilian writers in my courses. And we talked about discrimination in Brazil, racism, etc. And very often I taught about Black Brazilian women writers in general, but I always had Black Brazilian women writers in my courses. And Cadernos Negros, or Black Notebooks, the literary journal published by the renowned Quilomboge group from São Paulo, was a major resource for those of us interested in Black authored literature from Brazil. Cristiane Sobral began publishing in Cadernos Negros some 25 years ago. Her first publication in that journal was her poem Não Vou Mais Lavar os Pratos. I won't wash the dishes anymore. And since then, this particular poem has become anthological, and many people who read literature in Brazil know it, and it's taught in high schools, that kind of thing. This poem was also translated in English by John King, he's a critic, translator, and a poet himself. And Cristiane's poem and a few other poems that King translated appear in Words Without Borders. I met Cristiane personally much later in Brasilia around 2017 and invited her to give a talk at the university here in the US, in Virginia, where I taught. And she came in 2019. Actually, she gave 2 talks and poetry readings, one in the department where I taught, where some of my students have read her poetry in Portuguese, in the original Portuguese, and she gave another talk for the Gender Studies program. Cristiane didn't speak English back then, so I translated some of the poems as she read them and served as interpreter for the Q&A part of her presentations. My first translations of her fiction came out in 2021, and in 2023, she and I did a bilingual reading together for the Pan America Women Translation Series. And just last month, in February of this year, another story by Sobral that I translated came out in the Illinois Review, Daforim, an oblation for wounded wombs. So that's how it started.
I like that story very much, and thank you so much for translating it. What initially drew you to her writing?
I think one aspect of her poetry and fiction that attracted me, maybe the aspect that most attracted me in her work, is the wide range of tones the poetic and or the narrative voice takes on. As we see in I Won't Wash the Dishes Anymore, their voice is often defiant, rebellious, self-assertive. And such defiance is personal and political, and sometimes reach a tone, a tone of open hostility against white supremacy. She makes no excuses. Other times, that rebelliousness or defiance are expressed through more lyrical or erotic tones. Other times, still, the voice is more philosophical or instructive. So it's very multifaceted. Um, and I'd say that her readers, particularly those who come from a different background than she does, have a lot to learn from her literature and from Cristiane herself as a person and an educator. She has a very clear vision of how racism operates in our society, and she conveys that vision in a clear way, in a very intriguing but stimulating way, stimulating in the sense of making the reader ask questions, stop, think, and ask questions. I certainly have learned from her, and I'm very thankful for that. She touches me very deeply every time we talk because of her. She's a very bright, generous person. She's a humanist, but on the other hand, she can give expression to anger and rebellion in such a powerful and poignant way. So that's for me really is a major attraction to her work.
What are some challenges that you face as you translate her work?
Certainly, capturing and expressing those many nuanced voices in her fiction poetry into English, expressing that in English is a challenge. And that challenge is increased, multiplied by my own feelings of imposter syndrome. Both as these feelings come from, on one hand, the fact that I'm a non-native speaker of English, and on the other hand, from my awareness that there are many differences between Cristiane's and my own life experiences. But I found in her work an expression of my own otherness, my own sense of displacement as somebody who has been living out of my native country, outside my native country for so long. But I'm not blind to the fact that Sobral's skin color has marked her life experiences in radically different ways than mine. And really, my awareness of racism cannot compare with her personal experience of it. However, I think there is a great affinity between the two of us, and I try to approach her texts from a position of solidarity. At the same time, I think I step on solid ground just because of the research and reflection that I have done on racism in Brazil and in the US for quite some time now. And of course, there are semantic challenges that translators in general face when moving from one language to the other, right? Semantic and syntactical challenges. But that's part of the game, and that's something that brings me a lot of joy, actually, the playing with words. That's what attracts me to translation in general.
I can understand that. I share that with you. I would love for you to read from a translation of yours. Um, Please tell us what you're going to read from and whether it's been published or not.
I'm going to read an excerpt from a short story by Cristiane Sobral. The title is The Banquet. My translation has not been published yet. Her original story, Banquete, appeared for the first time in 2020 in a volume of a collection of short fiction that brought together 15 Black Brazilian writers. And a revised version of this story later appears in her book, Caixa Preta, or Black Box, published in 2023. But my translation has not appeared in print yet, has not been published yet. So here goes, The Banquet. The loneliness of a Black woman weighs on her shoulders like a rucksack full of rocks, like the stones I threw at the boys in my school when I was 10 years old after getting hit so many times without reacting. Those boys didn't bother me again after that day. I believe that the justice of Shango, the Lord of Rocks, protected me. I'm like that, always carry my orishas with me for everything, because here on earth I don't have anyone I can really count on. I live in a large city, but it's like I'm always alone. I walk by lots of people in shops, cafes, street corners, but I feel somewhat invisible. Nobody talks to me. They don't even see me. It's as if I didn't belong to that world, even though I've always been told that that's what I needed to be to get ahead. I've made it to the top, but haven't been able to bring my people along. One of these days in the evening, I was about to have dinner by myself as usual, but decided that I wasn't going to eat at home. I got dressed, left my apartment building, and headed to a posh restaurant around the corner. After all, I could afford it, didn't have to deprive myself from going anywhere I wanted. The restaurant was crowded, the tables full of vain people, that same frivolity common in places of white privilege. When my meal came, I began to push the food around my plate. The same old scenario had made me lose my appetite. Waiters looking at me surprised, women judging my skin color and curly hair, the hair I wear with pride, men with their wives sneaking a look at that mulata that could be very well available, children's tears implying, I've never seen a Black woman older than our maid at home. Look at her. I called the server, paid, and asked to have my meal boxed to go. In fact, at that instant, I had an inspiration. I resolved to make an offering. Ever since I was a child, growing up poor, I learned that food is sacred. Food shouldn't be wasted. And considering that those who give will always receive, I wasn't going to eat alone that night. I left with the food container in my hands and walked along the expansive, wide, and busy avenue until I came upon a man who seemed to live on the streets, rummaging through a dumpster. I stopped right there. I didn't have anywhere to go either, and decided to make my offering. I gave him the food. He looked at me and actually saw me. He could even be the father I'd never met. We were both Black. My feet hurt from walking so much in my tight, high heels. He wasn't wearing shoes. I asked him if I could sit there for a while, and he smiled. He sat down too. From inside his ragged jacket, he produced a bottle of cachaça. We ate and drank together on the sidewalk like two people breaking bread. He laughed out loud. I realized we weren't alone, sensing the presence of Exu. Laroye. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that great reading, and good luck placing it. I hope it'll find a great home.
Thank you so much, Ilze. It was great talking to you today.
Same here. It was a pleasure.
Bye.